Hey guys, this is Levi with Grendel Hunter, and right here I have a 22-inch 6mm ARC that we're going to be using today to test out a couple varmint rounds. We have a 58 grain Hornady VMAX, and this one's loaded up by Druid Hill Armory, and an 80 grain ELD-VT. We're going to be shooting them to test out accuracy, velocity, and energy, and then shooting a couple different style targets to look at penetration, expansion, and fragmenting. So to kick it off, let's shoot a couple groups and look at accuracy. First up is a 58 grain VMAX. This bullet is fast. Shooting it through the chronograph, the average velocity out of a 10 round string was 3,436 feet per second. This bullet has a ballistic coefficient of 0.250 and at 100 yards it grouped quite well. The heavier 80 grain ELD-VT has a much higher ballistic coefficient at 0.410, but it is over 450 feet per second slower than the 58 grain VMAX. In a 10 round string, both of these loads had good standard deviation at 15. Shooting multiple groups with each bullet, they both shot sub-minute of angle. Alright, so both rounds performed very well there. For the next test, we're going to look at penetration and fragmentation. We layered up a bunch of saturated cardboard with a piece of 3/4 inch plywood to simulate bone structure. Let's go ahead and shoot that and see what happens. Alright, so we have the VMAX on your left and the ELD-VT on your right. Through the first 12 layers of the cardboard, we're not really seeing much happen with either bullet. Now we are to the 3/4 inch plywood, and here we see the VMAX open up quite a bit. The ELD-VT seems to be expanding as well, but the VMAX is over twice its size at this point. Through layers 13 to 31, the VMAX is creating a huge hole and doing a serious amount of damage and is completely shredding the cardboard. We will see it later, but pay attention to the amount of cardboard that is missing here. This is where we see the VMAX doing its max amount of damage. You can see a lot of shredded plywood in the cavity, and from here to the end of the cardboard, the wound channel from the ELD-VT seems to stay pretty consistent, while the VMAX begins to close down. With water jugs behind the cardboard target, we were able to recover a lot of the bullet fragments from the VMAX. It was interesting to see that even with a small hole in the water jug, that it was able to suck in a bunch of the cardboard as well. Since the ELD-VT exploded its water jug, we were only able to recover fragments of the lead core. Here we are shooting cardboard again, but trying to see if we can stop the bullet in the cardboard by shooting with the layers as opposed to shooting through them. So we don't see as much damage from the VMAX as in the last test, but it opens up right away after impact and creates a pretty consistent wound cavity right up until the bullet stops. Here the ELD-VT penetrates further into the target before it starts to open, and we can see that the bullet creates a very devastating cavity before it closes down. There were also fragments of this bullet that penetrated a lot further. For this last test, we are shooting 2x4s to see how the bullets react with a harder target. Both bullets open up about the same amount in the first 2x4. We will show this more in a little bit, but the VMAX cratered out the middle of the second 2x4, but had a much smaller exit hole. The VMAX stopped in the third board, and we can see a decent amount of shrapnel from the ELD-VT, but it had enough energy to make it through before stopping in the fourth 2x4. It's hard to show it on camera, but the VMAX really cratered out the middle of the second 2x4. And I thought it was interesting because we saw something very similar with the first cardboard test, with how much damage the bullet did right before losing a lot of its energy and stopping. In conclusion, both rounds performed quite well. The big difference we saw was in velocity and energy at the muzzle. The 58 grain VMAX came in at 481 feet per second faster. But with that being said, the 80 grain ELD-VT has a higher BC and will maintain velocity and energy better at longer range. As for penetration and fragmentation, the 80 grain ELD-VT had more penetration while the VMAX fragmented sooner. If you guys are interested in a 6mm ARC, check out the website at grendlehunter.com. And in addition to the load we shot today, Druid Hill Armory has a few other loads for the 6mm ARC, so check them out and use code GrendelHunter at the checkout for 10% off. That wraps up this video, and as always, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.